All right, guys, what's up? It's Hippie with the hookup tackle. We are talking a cold water technique for those finicky winter bass, and that's deMiki rigging. Let's dive right into it.
Welcome to the hookup tackle.
Oh, what a stud.
Yeah. Look at that.
That was sick.
Woo!
Cheers, my friends. Happy Sunday. All right, guys, some breaking news. What's new this week at the hookup tackle?
What a beautiful coastal fish.
Look at that.
Look at that gut on that.
That's a nice fish. All right, guys, thanks for clicking on today's video. Excited to get into this deep dive about deMiki rigging. Stoked to have my man CJ behind the camera.
What's up, dude?
Follow me on Instagram at Julius Fishing, and let's talk about this stuff, man. So deMiki rig for me is when those water temperatures are below 50 degrees, it gets really cold. Those fish get positioned in ditches, chasing bait. They get kind of pelagic, and they just get really tough to catch, right? They're not really oriented to anything. They're just so keyed in on that smaller bait out in those deeper water places. And the best way to target them is with a deMiki rig. It's called a bunch of different things. deMiki rig, I've heard it called tight lining. I've heard cowboy before because of the way it acts. But for me, it's a deMiki rig. And what it is something super simple. It is a 90-degree line tie jig head. So the line tie of this bait is what gives it all its action. So most of the time we are vertically dropping this below the boat on fish that we can see on our sonar. And the whole idea is if the fish are on the bottom, you drop this down to them just above, and you kind of just shake it in place and get them to come up and commit to it. You know, there's a lot of hype in the industry with mid-strolling, hover strolling, that kind of stuff. That's a little bit different. You know, you're casting that bait and, you know, adding some action. There's not a lot of action that goes into this. It's a straight drop down and basically just kind of holding it tight, maybe a couple actions. But the baits that we use are straight tail baits. And the key to that is they have a lot of action without giving the bait a lot of action. So that one right there is my go-to favorite. That is the Dolive stick. Couple different sizes depending on, you know, what your fish are doing. I like the 3.5-inch Dolive stick and the 3-inch Dolive stick. Any sort of shad pattern is going to work. Your whites, your electric shad looking stuff. But those are my go-to. I always start here.
Why do you think guys go straight tail instead of like a small paddle tail?
So I think paddle tail overpowers the bait, right? So when you drop it straight down, that paddle tail is going to work its way down. And the whole idea is this will spiral down. But a lot of your bites are once this thing is set tight and you're holding your line tight, and it's sitting like this vertically below the boat, and it just gives them that enticing, you know, action for them to shoot up and eat it.
Gotcha. So it's almost spiraling down like a tube would, and then once it gets down there, it's got like its little shimmy.
That's right. So it will circle down like this, but once you get it to your fishing position, it will sit just like this, how you see it under the water.
So if you have like a 45-degree line tie on there, then that bait's going to be angled.
Exactly. Weird. It's going to sit like this or like that, and that's
Gotcha.
Not what you want. You want it to sit straight up.
Gotcha.
There's a million different baits out in the market that are that, you know, 3 to maybe 4-inch size that have that straight tail that you can make work for this technique. But we're going to show you 5 of our favorite, maybe under the radar, you know, JDM style that you don't hear a bunch about, that you can add into your arsenal in some of these places that a lot of guys already deMiki rig. It's not a secret, it's been out for years, but maybe these are a few options that your fish haven't seen. So next are 2 options from Deps. If I jump from that Dolive shad, I'm probably going here. Another very popular bait right now for us,
Yep.
You know, in that mid-strolling deal and a bunch of other different techniques too, is the Deps Sakamata shad. That 4-inch, man, it fits perfect on a deMiki rig head, does everything we need it to do, and they love this profile in all the sizes, and they eat it really well, and a lot of good colors in that bait.
Yeah, let's talk about it sick.
Yeah, it is exploding in the US. Another good one that is kind of under the radar, a lot of people use this as a trailer, not necessarily thought of as a deMiki rig bait, but works for us, is the Deps Deathadder. So it's got that chunky mid body, so it takes that jig head, that hook really well, and it lasts, you know, a few more fish than you would on those thinner profile baits. And then you get a unique thin quiver tail action. So that tail is doing all kinds of little, you know, motions that other baits aren't. So that's a little sneaky one right there from Deps.
Yeah, if guys are familiar with like the shad shape worm, they're gonna love that thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, that little mouse tail is sneaky. It's good. Here's another one that's a little bit smaller, a lot more lifelike. We've been throwing it into our arsenal, and that is the Raid Fish Roller. Comes in a couple different sizes. That 3 inches is right on the money on the size. But yeah, man, pretty self-explanatory, that little fork tail, but it has that head, it has that beefy body, it takes that jig head, and it imitates those small bait fish that we're targeting.
Yeah, it looks super realistic.
Yeah, it's a really good one.
There it is.
Absolutely. So this is actually one of Griff's favorites. He kind of pointed me in the right direction to start using this one, and it's a badass choice for sure. Thanks, Griff. So another good one when they're on more of that 3-inch size stuff, new one to us, that is the BR fish. You've heard us talk about the winding technique over the last, you know, couple months. This is another bait that falls in that category, that straight tail. It's got more of a little spade on it, so a little bit different, still gonna give you that same quiver, but BR fish from duo Realis.
I love that it's got like the cut off head too. It's gonna fit that jig head perfect.
Yeah, and if you can see, it's got that flat back. Sits really good on that jig head, and you know, gives you the action. Pretty self-explanatory, just straight tail baits. We're just showing you guys a couple options that, you know, your fish probably haven't seen, or, you know, probably not familiar to. All right, guys, so I just showed you my 5 top picks for deMiki rig, and Griff overheard us talking about this technique, and this is his go-to. That is a Duo Realis Pintail in the 3-inch. Again, same everything, that meaty body, straight tail. You're gonna get that quiver action from that thinner tail, and checks all the boxes. So real quick, we're just gonna throw a couple heads that we carry here in the shop and that we've been using. The new one is that Taddo Designs.
The thing's sweet.
That is a badass jig head.
Looks
super good. Nice paint job on it, really good hook. The keeper on it's money. Here it is on that Dolive stick, but that's my go-to head right now.
Let me see that again real quick. Just zoom in a little bit more on that. Let the folks at home see it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's a clean setup.
Yeah, really good. So that is my go-to right now, is that Taddo Designs. Comes in a bunch of different sizes, a couple different colors, but that's it right there. 3/8 is kind of where I like to start. You can go quarter if they sit higher up in the water column, all the way up to a 3/4 sometimes, but I start at that 3/8. Most of the time, I prefer a rounded style head, right? But there's nothing wrong with something like this, more of a like minnow style head. Again, the biggest thing with this technique, you'll hear guys talk about it, it's all about that 90-degree line tie. As long as it has a line tie like that, you are accomplishing what you're looking to accomplish. So whatever jig heads work for you that have that line tie, that's all you really want to be worried about.
The nice thing about that jig head too is you got lead right there on the shank of the hook too.
Absolutely. So it allows it to keel better.
Yep, absolutely.
And keep that straight up and down motion that we're looking for.
There you go, sir. There's some rods for you.
Cool. Awesome. So let's start here. This is my personal rod in my boat for this technique. This rod does a million different things, hence the name, utility player spin. Daiwa Steez AGS. It's a 7'1" medium. So I prefer a medium when I'm dropping straight down vertical. Most of the time, I like to have that little bit faster rod. This is per se like a medium light, because these jig heads, they have a pretty decent stout hook on them. They're not, you know, it's not a true finesse technique. It's kind of more of a power finesse technique. So that hook's not really that light of a wire. So I want a rod that has a good enough backbone to drive that jig head, because it happens fast. You drop down on a fish, shoots up, eats it. You want to be able to connect quick and, you know, keep them pinned. So that's my go-to rod of choice for deMiki rigging.
So a drop shot rod's probably going to be a little too light.
Yeah, your medium light spinning rods, if you're using a lighter jig head, you know, it definitely could work, but I like that medium just so I have that, you know, confidence in it that I'm definitely going to drive that hook in a little bit better.
Is there a certain length rod you're like preferring?
7'1" to 7'3", I don't think length really hurts you that much. You are dropping vertical, but you know, having that little extra rod out in front of you, because if you know, maybe you're panning around, you see some maybe 10, 15 feet out, just to make those short little pitches. The length definitely helps.
Nice.
I would stay around that 7-ish foot range. Here's another rod. We're gonna go P5. Kind of like to stay in between those two, either Steez or Megabass P5. This is actually Griff's deMiki rod of choice. This is a Destroyer, Megabass Destroyer Addermine. So 6'11", lands in that, you know, medium action range that we're looking for. So right in that same category. It's got the right length, right feel. Everything's good on that.
P5s are just so like ergonomically nice. Like
Absolutely,
they just fit well
man.
in the hand. They're light, super sensitive.
For sure.
Addermine's just a sick rod overall.
Yeah, I think they nailed it, and I feel like a lot of guys that might even already have this rod just found another technique to use it for.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, thanks for joining me today. I had a good time staying warm inside. It's cold in Phoenix, believe it or not. Had fun talking about one of my favorite techniques when those fish get finicky and it's cold outside. So hopefully these baits can help you. And yeah, man, I've had a good time. CJ, always good.
Yep, always a pleasure.
So we're going to close this up and go drink a beer.
Let's do it.
All right, later, guys.